What if your patio has never produced fruit? Not because the space is too small, but because you chose the wrong fruit plant for a pot. A lot of people give up on growing fruit at home because they think fruit belongs in a real backyard. They imagine deep soil, big trees, long rows, and years of waiting. So when all they have is a balcony, a small deck, or a sunny corner beside the house, they assume fruit is out of reach. Some dwarf fruit trees and berry bushes can live for years in containers. Some can bloom in a simple patio pot. Some can give you real fruit without a traditional garden bed. The catch is that a fruit plant does not produce just because the label says dwarf, and it does not fruit just because you put it in a container. They walk through a garden center in spring and see a small lemon tree covered in glossy leaves. They see a little peach tree with a pretty tag on the branch. They see blueberry bushes, strawberry plants, tiny apple trees, and pots that make the whole idea look easy. The plant looks healthy. The label looks promising. The dream is simple. Bring it home, put it on the patio, water it, and wait for fruit. The tree is still alive. It may even push out new leaves, but there are no flowers. Or the flowers appear and drop. Or tiny fruit starts forming and then falls off. Sometimes the leaves turn yellow. Sometimes the soil stays wet for too long. Sometimes the plant grows taller and taller, but never becomes productive. And that is the frustrating part. A fruit plant can survive in a pot for years without ever becoming a fruit-producing plant. So this video is not just a list of pretty plants you can keep in containers. This is about fruit plants that have a real chance to produce in pots when you match them with the right variety, the right container, the right soil, the right sunlight, and the right expectations. Because growing in a pot and producing in a pot are not the same thing. A tree can grow leaves in a pot. A berry bush can stay alive in a pot. A citrus plant can sit near a sunny door and look beautiful. But fruiting takes more energy. It takes enough root space. It takes enough light. It takes drainage. And for some trees, it takes the right climate, the right chill hours, or a second plant nearby for pollination. That is why the first rule is simple. Do not choose a fruit plant only because it looks good at the store. Choose it because it matches your real space. If you have a small balcony with only a few hours of sun, your best plant may not be the same as someone with a hot, open patio. If you live where winter freezes hard, your best choice may be different from someone in a warm coastal climate. If you want fruit quickly, strawberries may make more sense than a young dwarf apple tree. If you want a long-term tree that feels like a mini orchard, a fig or dwarf citrus may be worth the patience. And that brings us to one of the biggest misunderstandings in container fruit gardening. Cheap pots do not mean tiny pots. Yes, you can start with simple containers. You do not need fancy ceramic planters, a custom-built orchard box, or an expensive raised bed. Many fruit plants can grow in basic plastic tubs, nursery pots, half barrels, fabric grow bags, or recycled containers if they are safe, sturdy, and well drained. A tiny pot may keep a young plant alive for a while, but fruiting plants are not like a small herb you clip every week. They need a stronger root system to support leaves, flowers, and fruit at the same time. When the root zone is too small, the plant dries out too fast, heats up too quickly, runs out of nutrients, and becomes stressed. So when I say cheap pot, I mean simple and affordable. I do not mean cramped, soggy, or shallow. A good fruit container needs drainage holes. It needs a potting mix that does not turn heavy and muddy. It needs enough depth and width for the type of plant you are growing. It needs to stay stable when the plant gets taller. This is one reason a fruit tree can fail even when you water it every day. The problem may not be neglect. The problem may be that the pot is working against the plant. Many beginners take soil from the yard and put it into a container. It feels natural because garden soil grows plants in the ground. But in a pot, heavy soil can compact, drain slowly, and trap water around the roots. Fruit plants hate that. Even plants that enjoy consistent moisture still need air around the roots. That is why potting mix matters. The roots need moisture, but they also need oxygen. Water should move through the pot, instead of sitting at the bottom like a swamp. If the mix stays wet too long, roots become weak, leaves yellow, and the plant may stop putting energy into fruit. And some fruit plants need even more specific soil. Blueberries are the perfect example. They are one of the most valuable fruits to grow in a container, but they need acidic conditions. If you treat a blueberry like a regular shrub, it may survive for a while, but it can struggle, yellow, and refuse to grow well. You can control the mix for blueberries. You can move citrus away from frost. You can place strawberries where they get morning sun. You can put a fig in a warm corner. You can train a grapevine on a small support. You can grow fruit where the native soil would never be ideal. Most fruiting plants need more sun than people expect. Leaves can grow in less than perfect light, but fruit usually requires stronger energy. If a plant is shaded for most of the day, it may stay alive and still never bloom well. Or it may bloom weakly and drop fruit. This is especially important on balconies and patios. A balcony may look bright to your eyes, but if it only gets filtered light or one short window of sun, it may not be enough for many fruiting plants. Before choosing a tree, watch your space. Notice where the sun lands in the morning, what happens in the afternoon, and whether a railing, wall, roofline, or neighboring building blocks the light. If your sun is limited, start with the plants that can handle your conditions better. If your space gets strong, direct sun, you can consider more demanding fruit plants. The right plant in the right light will outperform the dream plant in the wrong location. This is one of the quiet reasons container fruit trees fail. Some plants are self-fertile, meaning one plant can produce fruit on its own. Others produce better with a second compatible variety nearby. Some apples, cherries, plums, and pears may need help from another tree. If you buy one beautiful tree without checking its pollination needs, you may wait and wonder why it blooms, but until sets fruit. The tree may not be broken. It may simply need the right partner, the right insects, or better flower timing. This is why the tag on the plant matters. The variety matters. The rootstock matters. The words dwarf or patio are not enough. You want to know whether that plant is self-pollinating, whether it needs another variety, and whether it fits your climate. The United States is not one growing condition. A patio in Arizona, a balcony in New York, a backyard in Georgia, and a deck in Oregon are completely different places for a fruit plant. Citrus may love warmth, but it can suffer in freezing weather. Blueberries may need the right chill and the right acidic soil. Peaches, apples, cherries, pears, and plums may need winter chill hours to fruit properly, but some varieties need more cold than others. A plant that works beautifully for one gardener may fail for another because the winter or summer pattern is different. A shopper sees a beautiful plant and imagines the fruit. A gardener asks, does this plant match my zone, my sun, my pot size, my winter, and my patience? Container fruit gardening can be incredibly rewarding, but it is not the same as a commercial orchard. A pot may give you a handful of strawberries, a small bowl of blueberries, a few figs, some lemons, or a modest harvest from a dwarf tree. The goal is not to promise a giant harvest from a tiny container. The goal is to grow real fruit in a real small space. As we go through the list, listen for the pattern. For each fruit plant, we are not just asking whether it can grow in a pot. We are asking what kind of pot it needs, what kind of light it needs, what mistake makes it fail, and what kind of gardener should start with it. Because the best fruit plant is not always the most dramatic one. It is not always the biggest tree. It is not always the one with the prettiest picture on the tag. Stay with me, because some of the easiest fruits to grow in pots are not the biggest or most expensive looking trees at the garden center. Before we start the list, remember this simple idea. A small space does not stop you from growing fruit. The wrong plant, the wrong pot, the wrong soil, and the wrong expectations do. So, now that we know why many potted fruit plants fail, let's start with the fruits that give beginners the best chance of seeing real results. Let's begin with the fruit plants that give beginners the best chance of feeling early success in containers. Not because they are magic, not because they produce without care, but because, compared with many larger fruit trees, they are easier to understand, easier to place, and easier to manage in a small space. The first one is strawberry. If you want your first container fruit win, strawberries may be the best place to start. They do not look like a tree. They do not need a huge root system. They can grow in hanging baskets, window boxes, long patio planters, fabric grow bags, or simple nursery pots with good drainage. And when the fruit turns red, it gives you something satisfying. A real harvest you can see without waiting years for a trunk to mature. That is why strawberries are so powerful for beginners. They prove that fruit in a pot is not just an idea. It can be something you touch, pick, and taste from a small container. But strawberries still have rules. They need good light. They need soil that drains well but does not dry into dust. They need enough space so the leaves can breathe. If you crowd too many plants into one small container, you may get lots of leaves, weak airflow, and fruit that stays small or spoils quickly. One common mistake is treating strawberries like decoration. People tuck them into a pretty pot, hang them where the light is weak, water only when the leaves look tired, and then wonder why the plant does not give much fruit. Strawberries are small, but they are still fruiting plants. They need steady moisture, sun, and regular feeding. Another mistake is expecting one old strawberry pot to stay productive forever. If the container is full of tired crowns, tangled runners, and compacted soil, the answer may not be more fertilizer. The answer may be renewal. So if you are new, start simple. Use a container with drainage holes. Give the plants room. Keep the soil evenly moist, not soggy. Place them where they receive strong light. If you see runners taking over, decide whether you want to root them as new plants or remove them so the mother plant can focus. Strawberry is the quick confidence builder. It is the plant that tells a beginner, yes, fruit can happen here. The second plant is fig. A fig tree in a pot feels different from strawberries. It feels like a real fruit tree. It has woody stems, big leaves, and a shape that can make a small patio feel like a tiny orchard. If you want one plant that gives your container garden a serious fruit tree feeling, fig is one of the best candidates. Figs are popular for pots because they can be managed by pruning and container size. In the ground, some fig trees can become large. In a container, you can keep the plant more controlled. That does not mean you should trap it in a tiny pot. It means you can grow it in a large, stable container and manage its size year after year. The secret with figs is warmth, sun, drainage, and patience. A fig will not be happy in a dark corner. It wants strong light. It wants a potting mix that drains well. It wants enough room for roots. If you water unevenly, let the pot dry out too hard, or keep the roots sitting wet, the tree can become stressed. And when fruit plants become stressed, fruit is often the first thing they sacrifice. This is where many people misunderstand figs. They see a fig tree as tough, and in many ways it is. But tough does not mean careless. A fig in a container still depends on you for water, food, root space, and winter decisions. In cold areas, the container is both helpful and risky. Helpful because you may be able to move the tree to a protected spot. Risky because roots in a pot are more exposed to cold than roots in the ground. So if your winters are harsh, think about protection before the cold arrives. The payoff is worth it for the right gardener. A healthy potted fig can become a long-term patio plant. It can give structure, shade, beautiful leaves, and, in the right conditions, real fruit. It may not give you a commercial harvest. The point is, walking outside and seeing figs forming on a tree, you are growing in a container. If strawberries are the quick confidence builder, fig is the plant that makes your patio feel like a real fruit garden. The third plant is Dwarf Meyer lemon. This is one of the most beautiful fruit plants you can grow in a pot. The leaves are glossy, the flowers can be fragrant, the fruit is bright and easy to recognize. On a thumbnail, a container lemon tree almost sells the dream by itself. But this is exactly why many people buy citrus too quickly. A dwarf Meyer lemon can be excellent in a pot, especially because containers allow you to move the tree. In warm climates, it may live outside most of the year. In colder places, the pot gives you the chance to bring the tree into a protected area when temperatures drop. But Meyer lemon is not a low-light houseplant. That is the mistake. Many people bring a lemon tree indoors for winter, place it in a room that looks bright to human eyes, and then the tree starts dropping leaves, flowers, or tiny fruit. The plant is reacting to stress, less light, dry indoor air, temperature swings, watering problems, or a sudden move from outdoor conditions to indoor conditions. If your citrus blooms and drops flowers, do not immediately assume the tree is bad. Look at the care pattern. Is the soil staying too wet? Is the pot draining? Is the plant getting enough direct light? Did the temperature change suddenly? Is the tree too young to carry much fruit? A good citrus container should drain freely. The plant should not sit in a saucer of water. The potting mix should be airy. The tree needs as much bright light as you can realistically provide. And if you move it indoors, give it the brightest position available and avoid sudden changes. The best thing about a dwarf Meyer lemon is that it feels useful even before a huge harvest. The leaves are beautiful, the flowers add fragrance. A few ripe lemons can feel special because they came from a tree you kept alive in a pot. But be honest with your climate. In a warm zone, Meyer lemon may be one of the most satisfying container fruit trees. In a cold zone, it is still possible for many people, but it becomes a plant you must protect, move, act, and monitor. That is the trade-off. Citrus gives you one of the strongest visual rewards in container gardening, but it asks for light, drainage, and winter awareness in return. The fourth plant is dwarf pomegranate. This one surprises people because it does not always look like the standard patio fruit choice. But dwarf pomegranate can be a beautiful container plant, especially for gardeners who have strong sun and want something ornamental as well as edible. Pomegranate has personality. The flowers can be bright and eye-catching, and a dwarf variety can be kept smaller with pruning. But again, the word dwarf is not permission to ignore the basics. Dwarf pomegranate still wants sun. It wants drainage. It does not want to sit in heavy, soggy soil. It does not want to be treated like a shade plant. And if you expect a young plant in a small pot to carry a heavy fruit load right away, you may be disappointed. The biggest mistake with dwarf pomegranate is placing it where it cannot gather enough energy. Flowers and fruit take sunlight. If the plant is grown in a dim corner, it may stay alive, but never become impressive. Another mistake is using a pot that is too small, and then letting the soil swing between bone dry and soaking wet. If you grow dwarf pomegranate, think of it as a sun-loving container shrub. Give it a warm position. Use a pot that will not tip easily. Prune lightly to shape it. Do not rush the plant into carrying more fruit than it can support. It may not be the first plant every beginner should buy, but for a sunny patio, it can be one of the most interesting. So far, we have 4 very different starting points. Strawberry gives you the fastest feeling of fruit in a small container. Fig gives you the feeling of a real mini orchard. Dwarf Meyer lemon gives you beauty, fragrance, and bright fruit if you can provide enough light and protection. Dwarf pomegranate gives you color, heat-loving character, and something different from the usual patio plants. And notice the pattern. None of these plants works because the pot is magical. They work when the plant matches the space. If you want the easiest first step, choose strawberry. If you want a long-term patio tree, consider fig. If you have strong light and can protect from cold, dwarf Meyer lemon can be a beautiful choice. If your patio is hot, sunny, and you want ornamental value too, dwarf pomegranate deserves a look. The next group is where the value gets even higher, because these are the fruits many people keep buying in small, expensive boxes at the grocery store. So, once you understand the beginner-friendly plants, it is time to look at the berry bushes and climbing fruits that can turn a simple patio into a high-value container garden. Now we move into the fruit plants that make expensive fruits in cheap pots feel real. Berries and small climbing fruits are powerful because they are the kind of fruit people often buy in small boxes at the grocery store. A small harvest may not replace every berry you buy, but it can make a simple pot feel fresh, valuable, and exciting. The fifth plant on the list is blueberry. Blueberries are tempting in pots because the fruit feels valuable, the plant looks beautiful, and containers can sometimes help instead of hurt. In the ground, blueberries can be difficult if your native soil is not right. In a pot, you can control the soil from the beginning. You are not fighting a whole yard of unsuitable soil. You are creating one controlled root zone. But here is the catch. Blueberries are not regular shrubs. The biggest mistake is planting a blueberry in normal potting soil and treating it like every other patio plant. Blueberries need acidic conditions. If the soil is wrong, the plant may survive, but it can slowly turn pale, yellow, weak, and unproductive. The leaves may tell you something is wrong long before the plant gives fruit. So if you choose blueberry, think of the container as a custom home for the roots. The pot must drain well, but the mix must hold steady moisture. The plant should not sit in heavy, soggy soil, but it also should not dry out completely, again and again. A layer of mulch can help keep moisture more even. And when choosing a variety, do not just pick the prettiest plant at the store. Look for compact, container-friendly varieties, and check whether your variety benefits from having another blueberry nearby for better pollination. This is where many beginners get it backwards. They think the main question is, can a blueberry grow in a pot? The better question is, can I give this blueberry the acidic mix, moisture, sunlight, and pollination support it needs to fruit? If the answer is yes, blueberry can be one of the most rewarding container fruits you grow. It gives flowers, attractive leaves, beautiful berries, and a harvest that feels special even in small amounts. The sixth plant is raspberry. Raspberries are different from blueberries because the challenge is not only soil, the challenge is canes. A raspberry plant produces canes, and those canes need space, light, airflow, and management. In a container, the pot helps limit the spread, but it does not remove the need for pruning. That is why container raspberries work best when you start with the right type. Look for compact or patio-friendly varieties when possible. A large, vigorous raspberry that wants to run through a garden bed may not be the best choice for a small balcony pot. A good raspberry container should support the canes, stay heavy enough not to tip, and sit where the plant receives strong light. You may need a simple support, even if it is just a small trellis or a few stakes. The mistake with raspberries is letting the plant turn into a tangle. A tangled raspberry plant is harder to water, harder to harvest, and more likely to have poor airflow. Old canes, weak canes, and overcrowded growth can steal energy from the fruiting parts of the plant. So pruning is not optional decoration. It is part of making the plant productive. You also need to understand the type you are growing. Some raspberries fruit on older canes. Some are everbearing or fall-bearing types that can be handled differently. If you prune the wrong canes at the wrong time, you may cut away the wood that was supposed to produce fruit. Raspberry can be a wonderful container fruit for someone who wants a high-value harvest and is willing to do a little cane management. For a sunny patio with a large pot and a simple support, it can be very satisfying. The seventh plant is compact, thornless blackberry. Blackberries can be exciting, but they can also be too much plant if you choose the wrong variety. Traditional blackberries can grow strong and wide. That is not what most people want on a balcony or a clean patio. For containers, the words to look for are compact, thornless, and patio-friendly. A thornless blackberry is easier around children, pets, walkways, and small spaces. A compact variety is easier to keep in a large pot. But even with the right type, blackberry is still a cane plant. It needs room, support, and pruning. The reward can be impressive. Blackberries look beautiful when the fruit ripens from green to red to deep black. They create a strong visual payoff, and they fit the expensive fruit at home idea very well. But the common mistake is underestimating the plant. People buy a blackberry because the picture looks delicious. Then they place it in a small pot with no support, let the canes lean everywhere, and become frustrated when the plant looks wild instead of productive. A blackberry is not a tiny decorative herb. It is a fruiting cane plant that needs structure. Give it a container with space. Give it sun. Give it something to lean on or tie to. Keep the canes organized. The container can help you control the root zone, but your pruning controls the shape. Compact, thornless blackberry is best for gardeners who want a bold fruit plant and are willing to train it. If you only have a tiny balcony with very limited space, strawberries or compact blueberries may be easier. But if you have a sunny patio and a sturdy container, blackberry can become one of the most exciting fruit plants in the whole setup. Before you buy a berry bush for a container, there is one question that matters more than the size of the plant at the store. Can you give it the soil, pruning, and sunlight it needs to fruit? That question becomes even more important with plant 8, patio grape vine. Grapes sound too big for pots. Many people imagine vineyard rows, long vines, strong posts, and wide open space. But a grapevine can be grown in a large container if you treat it like a trained plant, not like a wild vine. This is not the easiest choice, but it may be one of the most interesting. A patio grapevine needs strong sun. It needs a large container. It needs excellent drainage. It needs a support system. And most of all, it needs pruning. Without pruning, grapevines often become long, leafy, and disappointing. You may get plenty of green growth but very little fruit. This is where the beginner mistake is easy to understand. A gardener sees the vine growing fast and thinks the plant is doing perfectly. But fast green growth is not the same as fruit production. With grapes, too much unmanaged growth can become the problem. The vine needs structure. You can train it along a small trellis, a railing, a pergola edge, or a sturdy frame. The goal is to guide the plant so light reaches the leaves and fruiting wood is managed correctly. A grape in a pot also depends on consistent watering. A large vine in a container can dry out faster than you expect in summer, but the container still needs to drain. Wet roots and dry stress can both cause problems. If you want grapes in a pot, start by choosing the right variety for your climate and purpose. Some grapes are better for fresh eating. Some are better suited to certain regions. Some handle disease pressure better than others. Patio grapes are not for the gardener who wants the lowest maintenance fruit plant. But for someone who enjoys training, pruning, and building a small vertical food garden, they can be very rewarding. And they bring something special to a patio. Height. A grapevine can climb, create shade, and make a small space feel greener without needing a wide bed. So in this chapter, the pattern is clear. Blueberry gives you high value, but the soil must be right. Raspberry gives you a premium fruit, but the canes must be managed. Compact thornless blackberry can be productive and dramatic, but only if you choose the right type and give it structure. Patio grape can turn a container into a vertical fruit plant, but it needs sun, pruning, and a serious container. These are not the plants to buy carelessly just because the fruit is expensive at the store. These are plants to buy when you understand what they ask for. That is the real secret behind a high-value container fruit garden. It is not about forcing every expensive fruit into a pot. It is about choosing the fruit that matches your space closely enough to give you a real chance. If your patio has strong sun, you have more options. If your balcony has limited space, choose compact plants first. If you love berries, but do not want pruning work, start with strawberries or blueberries before moving into raspberries and blackberries. If you enjoy training plants, grapes may be worth the effort. Do not copy someone else's garden plant for plant. Copy the decision process. Ask what the plant needs. Ask what your space can give, then choose where those two answers match. Now, let's move from berries into the dwarf fruit trees that feel more like a real orchard, but also demand more from the container, the roots, and the gardener. Now we move into the part of the list that feels the most like a real orchard. These are the dwarf fruit trees that make people imagine a patio full of peaches, apples, cherries, plums, and pears. They look like classic fruit trees, but they are also where container gardeners need to slow down and make better decisions. This is the part of the list where the plants become more exciting, but also less forgiving. The bigger the fruit tree feels, the more important the container decisions become. The 9th plant is dwarf peach. A dwarf peach tree in a pot is one of the most tempting ideas in small space gardening. The blossoms can be beautiful, the fruit is familiar, and the whole tree gives you that true backyard orchard feeling even when it is sitting on a patio. But peach is not a plant to buy, only because the picture on the tag looks perfect. A dwarf peach needs strong sun. It needs a large, stable container. It needs drainage. It needs regular water without sitting in soggy soil. It also needs pruning, because a peach tree can put energy into too many branches if you never guide its shape. The common mistake is starting with a pot that matches the baby tree, not the mature tree you are trying to grow. A peach in a tiny container may survive, but survival is not the goal. The goal is a strong enough tree to bloom, hold fruit, and recover from stress. Another mistake is giving the tree too little sun. A peach tree may leaf out in weaker light, but fruiting asks for much more energy. If your patio only gets a short window of filtered light, peach may not be the best first choice. You also need to think about climate. Some peaches need winter chill to fruit properly. Some varieties are bred for warmer areas, and some are better for colder regions. If you ignore that, you may end up with a tree that looks fine, but does not behave the way you hoped. Dwarf peach is best for someone with a sunny patio, a serious container, and the willingness to prune and protect the tree when needed. It can be worth the effort, but it should not be treated like a decorative plant. You simply water and forget. The 10th plant is dwarf apple, especially columnar apple. Apple is one of the dream fruits for small spaces because it feels familiar. But in pots, the details matter. A dwarf apple is not just a regular apple tree that stays small by luck. The rootstock, the variety, and the growth habit matter. Columnar apples can be especially interesting for patios and narrow spaces because they grow more upright instead of spreading wide. That upright shape can make them useful along a sunny wall, near a deck edge, or in a row of containers where a wide tree would not fit. But even a columnar apple still needs enough root space, sun, and care. The first question with apple is pollination. Some varieties may produce better with another compatible apple nearby. Some may be sold as self-fertile, but still improve with cross-pollination. If you buy one tree and never check the pollination requirement, you may get flowers without much fruit. The second question is chill hours. Apples are tied to climate more than many beginners realize. A variety that works well in one part of the United States may not be the best match in another region. A dwarf or columnar apple can be a smart choice if you have a sunny location and choose carefully. But do not buy it only because the tag says dwarf. Ask whether it fits your climate, whether it seems another tree, and whether your container is big enough for a long-term plant. The 11th plant is dwarf cherry. Cherry may be one of the most beautiful ideas for a container fruit tree. The blossoms are beautiful, the fruit is exciting, and the tree has a premium feeling. But cherry is also one of the trees where choosing the wrong variety can lead to years of disappointment. A dwarf cherry for pots should be truly compact or grown on a dwarfing rootstock. You also need to check whether it is self-fertile or whether it needs another compatible cherry nearby. This one detail can change everything. Many gardeners fall in love with cherry because of the fruit, then later discover that the tree they bought was not the best match for their space or pollination situation. The tree may bloom, it may look alive, but without the right conditions, fruit can be limited. Cherry also needs strong light and good airflow. A crowded corner where the leaves stay damp or the light is weak is not ideal. In a pot, drainage is critical. The roots should not sit in heavy, wet soil. A dwarf cherry can work beautifully for the right gardener, but it is not the easiest beginner fruit in the whole list. If you are brand new, build confidence with strawberries, figs, citrus, or blueberries first. If you already understand containers and you are willing to choose carefully, a dwarf cherry can be a beautiful long-term goal. The 12th plant is dwarf plum. Plum is another tree that can feel like a real orchard plant in a container. It has attractive blossoms and fruit that feels more substantial than a small berry harvest. But with plum, balance is the key word. A dwarf plum needs a container large enough to support both roots and canopy. If the top grows too large for the pot, the tree becomes stressed. If the roots are cramped, the plant may struggle to support fruit. If the soil drains poorly, root problems can begin quietly before you notice the tree declining. Pruning matters because a plum tree can become too dense. In a container, You want enough branches to create fruiting potential, but not so many that the tree becomes crowded and weak. Airflow and light penetration matter. Pollination can also matter. Some plums need another compatible variety nearby. Some may be self-fertile, depending on the type. Do not assume. Check before you buy. Dwarf plum can be rewarding, but it belongs in the category of choose carefully and prepare the container first. You are not just keeping a plant alive. You are managing roots, shape, sun, and fruiting wood. The 13th plant is compact pear or dwarf pear. Pear is elegant, familiar, and beautiful, but it is also one of those fruits people sometimes underestimate in pots. A pear tree may be sold as dwarf or compact, but the mature needs of the tree still matter. Pears often need strong sun, a deep container, careful pruning, and attention to pollination. Many pear varieties benefit from or require another compatible pear nearby. If you only have room for one pot, you must check the variety before you buy. A compact pear may work for a sunny patio or small yard where you can give it a large container and long-term care. But it may not be the best choice for a tiny balcony with weak light. It also may not be the best first fruit tree for someone who wants the easiest possible harvest. The mistake with pear is trusting the word dwarf too much. Dwarf does not mean no pruning. Dwarf does not mean tiny pot. Dwarf does not mean it ignores climate, chill, or pollination. It simply means the tree has been selected or grafted to stay smaller than a standard tree. That smaller size gives you an opportunity. It does not remove the responsibility. If you grow a compact pear, think long-term. Start with a good container, place it in sun, keep the shape open, and learn whether it needs a pollination partner. So, what do all 5 of these trees have in common? Dwarf peach, dwarf apple, dwarf cherry, dwarf plum, and compact pear are the plants that make a container garden feel like a real orchard. They are also the plants that punish careless choices more than strawberries or a simple pot of herbs ever will. They can be wonderful, but they ask better questions from you. Do you have enough sun? Is the container large enough? Does the variety match your climate? Does the tree need another compatible variety nearby? Can you prune it? Can you protect the pot in extreme weather? Are you willing to wait long enough for a young tree to mature? If the answer is no, that does not mean you cannot grow fruit. It means you may want to start with an easier plant first. A strawberry pot, a fig, a Meyer lemon in the right climate, or a blueberry with the right soil may give you a better first experience. If the answer is yes, then these dwarf trees can become the backbone of a small container orchard. They bring height, structure, blossoms, and the feeling of growing real tree fruit in a space that once seemed too small. After seeing these trees, the final question is not simply which fruit plant is best. The real question is which one is best for your space, your climate, and the way you can care for it. In the final chapter, we will finish the list with 2 more container fruit plants, and then put everything together so you can choose the right fruit plant for your own pot garden instead of copying someone else's patio. Before you buy your first fruit tree, do not ask only whether it can grow in a pot. Ask whether it can produce in your pot, in your sunlight, in your climate, with the care you can actually give it. That question matters most in the final chapter. Because now we are no longer just adding more names to the list. We are building a way to choose the right plant for your own space. The 14th plant is dwarf mulberry. Mulberry is one of those fruit plants many people overlook. It does not always get the same attention as lemon, peach, strawberry, or blueberry. But for the right gardener, a compact mulberry in a large container can be surprisingly interesting. The appeal is simple. Mulberries can be flavorful, productive in the right conditions, and different from the fruits most people expect to see on a patio. A small mulberry tree can make a container garden feel more unusual and more personal. But this is not a plant to place anywhere without thinking. Mulberry can grow with energy, and even compact forms need management. If you choose a variety that wants to become large, a pot will not magically turn it into a perfect patio plant. You need a compact or dwarf type, a container with real root space, and a plan for pruning. The other thing to remember is fruit drop. Mulberries can stain surfaces when ripe fruit falls. That may not matter in a backyard corner, but it can matter on a clean deck, a light-colored patio, or a balcony floor. So, location matters. Put the pot where dropped fruit will not create a problem, or be ready to harvest, often when fruit begins to ripen. Dwarf mulberry is best for someone who wants something less common and has enough sun, enough space, and enough willingness to prune. It can be fun, but it is not the neatest plant for every small patio. The 15th plant is calamondin, or dwarf orange. This is a strong final plant because it gives the container garden something very visual. Small orange fruit on a compact citrus tree can look beautiful, especially near a sunny patio door or in a clean pot beside other fruit plants. Calamondin is often grown as an ornamental citrus, but the fruit can also be used in the kitchen, especially when you want bright, tart citrus flavor. A dwarf orange can offer a similar feeling: glossy leaves, fragrant flowers, and fruit that makes the plant look alive and valuable. But just like the Meyer lemon, citrus asks for light, drainage, and winter awareness. A calamondin or dwarf orange may look like an easy houseplant, but it is still a fruiting citrus. If you place it in weak indoor light for months, overwater it, or let it sit in a cold draft, it may drop leaves, flowers, or fruit. If the roots stay wet, the tree can decline quietly before you understand what happened. The container is useful because you can move the plant. That is one of the biggest advantages of growing citrus in pots. In a warm season, it can enjoy outdoor light. When cold weather threatens, you may be able to move it into protection, but moving it does not mean forgetting it. Indoors, it still needs the brightest position you can give it and a careful watering rhythm. Calamondin or dwarf orange is ideal for someone who wants a fruit plant that also feels decorative. It may not be the easiest plant for a dark apartment, but for a bright patio, sunroom, or protected winter setup, it can be one of the most satisfying container fruits. Now, the list of 15 is complete, but the most important part is not memorizing the names. The most important part is matching the plant to the place. If you are a complete beginner, start with the plants that give you the best chance to learn without feeling overwhelmed. Strawberry is the easiest confidence builder. Fig is a strong long-term choice if you have sun and a larger pot. Blueberry can be excellent if you are willing to prepare acidic soil. Dwarf Meyer, lemon, calamondin, or dwarf orange can be beautiful if you have bright light and a way to protect the plant from cold. If you have a sunny patio, your options open up. Fig, citrus, dwarf pomegranate, compact berries, patio grapes, and dwarf peach may all become possible depending on your climate and container size. Strong sun gives fruit plants the energy they need to flower and hold fruit. If you only have a balcony, be more selective. Choose compact plants first: strawberries, compact blueberries, small citrus, and possibly a columnar apple can make more sense than a wide, vigorous tree. Watch the sun carefully, because a balcony can look bright while still receiving only a short period of direct light. If you live in a cold climate, think about winter before you buy. A pot exposes roots more than the ground does. Citrus may need to come inside or into a protected area. Some trees need winter chill, but extreme cold can still damage roots in containers. A plant that is hardy in the ground may need extra protection in a pot. If you want the highest value grocery store feeling, focus on berries first. Blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, and strawberries can make a container garden feel rewarding even when the harvest is small. But remember the difference between them. Blueberry is about soil. Raspberry and blackberry are about cane management. Strawberry is about renewal, spacing, and steady care. If you want the mini orchard feeling, look at fig, dwarf peach, columnar apple, dwarf cherry, dwarf plum, compact pear, and citrus. These plants give height and structure. They make a patio feel more permanent. But they also ask for more patience, larger containers, pruning, and careful variety selection. Here are the rules I would use before choosing any fruit plant for a pot. First, start with the right variety. Do not rely on the word fruit tree alone. Look for dwarf, compact, patio, columnar, or container-friendly varieties when appropriate. And when pollination matters, check before you buy. Second, choose the container for the plant you want it to become. Not only the plant you are holding at the store. A small young tree can trick you. It looks like it fits in anything. But the root system that supports fruit needs more room than a temporary display pot. Third, give fruit plants the best light you can. Leaves can survive in less light, but fruit usually needs stronger energy. If your space is shady, choose more carefully and lower your expectations. Fourth, use a proper potting mix and drainage. Heavy soil, blocked holes, and water sitting at the bottom can ruin a fruit plant slowly. The roots need moisture, but they also need air. Fifth, feed for fruit, not just leaves. Too much leafy growth without balance can make a plant look impressive, but not productive. A fruit plant needs steady nutrition, but it also needs the right timing, light, and stress-free roots. Sixth, prune with purpose. Pruning is not just about making the plant smaller. It helps balance roots and branches, improve airflow, guide fruiting wood, and keep the plant manageable in a container. Seventh, protect the roots in extreme weather. Hot pots can dry out fast. Cold pots can freeze harder than ground soil. A container gives you control, but it also gives you responsibility. If you remember these rules, the list becomes much more useful. You will not look at a plant and ask only, "Do I like this fruit?" You will ask, "Can I give this plant what it needs?" That one question can save you from wasting years on the wrong tree. A small patio can become a fruit garden. A balcony can hold more food than people expect. A few large pots can change the way you see your outdoor space. But the success does not come from buying every exciting fruit plant you see. It comes from choosing the one that matches your light, your climate, your container, and your patience. So, start with one, not 15 at once. One good container, one well-chosen fruit plant, one place with the best light you have. Learn how that plant drinks, grows, blooms, struggles, and responds. Then, add the next plant with more confidence. And as you build, keep notes. Write down when the plant bloomed, when leaves yellowed, when the pot dried out fastest, and when fruit began to form. Container fruit gardening improves when you observe your own space instead of guessing. Your patio has its own pattern of sun, wind, heat, cold, and moisture. Once you learn that pattern, choosing the next fruit plant becomes easier. That is how a tiny orchard begins. Not with a huge backyard, not with perfect conditions, not with a miracle promise. It begins with a smart choice, a simple pot, and the patience to grow the right fruit plant in the right place. A small space does not stop you from growing fruit. The wrong plant, the wrong pot, and the wrong expectations do. Start with one good container, one well-chosen fruit plant, and build your tiny orchard from there.